As a kid, there were only two things in life that I needed: my Nintendo DS, which later got upgraded to the 3DS, and first-party Nintendo games, but none more so than Pokemon. I would wake up every morning and go to the sports stadiums where the trainers would reset daily, and I did this for nearly every single one of the Pokemon that I liked until they hit level 100. As long as I had my DS and Pokemon, life was good, but one day when I was studying how I could get better at Smash Bros. For 3DS, I came across a title called Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. That game would be the one to make my teenage brain realize that Nintendo isn't the only console and video game manufacturer, and it really sat in when my best friend showed up to class one day boasting about his brand new PlayStation 4. I would go to his house frequently, and that very day was no exception, and when I entered his room, he wasted no time handing me a foreign-looking controller, while he enthusiastically slid a game into the disk drive, the title Infamous Second Son popping up on the home screen. And when I tell you I slept over at his house that entire weekend just because I couldn't put the game down, that's how much Infamous Second Son meant to me. And as I put the PS4 disc into my PS5 in the year 2025, all of the emotions and memories come flooding back to me. Infamous Second Son is one of my favorite games of all time, and it was also my gateway into a non-Nintendo gaming world. I begged my parents for a PS4 way back when and snagged myself a copy of Second Son with whatever little money I had gathered over the months from holidays and relatives. I played and replayed Second Son like you wouldn't believe. It was the first time I experienced action-adventure gameplay. It was the first time I got a platinum trophy for a game. It was the first time I shed genuine tears to a story. It's been close to 8 years since I last played Second Son, but loading the game up on my PS5 and taking the helm as Delsin once again felt like slipping on an old glove effortlessly. As I boot up the game, I'm greeted with the scrolling wall of text, and as a teenager, reading this would fill me with a sense of mystery and intrigue. I didn't know that Second Son was actually the third game in a series, and the question never popped into my head, so I never bothered to ask. I was so absorbed by this lore about Conduits, the Department of Unified Protection, and what exactly occurred 7 years ago that caused what is essentially the equivalent of X-Men gene mutations. These were questions that I thought I could seek out by playing Second Son, and you definitely can. There's a lot of lore spread around this world from the main story to the side missions, like the informant audio logs you can collect. And by the end of the game, I was well aware that this was actually a series of video games, and a series I wanted to get very involved with. Furthering my intrigue and interest in the series was a DLC for Second Son called Cole's Legacy, which was the first stepping stone in getting me to backtrack through this series, but back in the day, this DLC was only accessible through the collector's edition. And would you happen to know it, my best friend had exactly that, so I was able to experience those missions via his PlayStation 4. This DLC was short but sweet. It gave me a taste of who Cole was and the legacy he left behind, and the rest was up to me to seek out. But the only problem was that I didn't own a PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4 wasn't backwards compatible with the previous consoles. My friend had also sold his PS3 to afford a PS4, so he couldn't help me out in this department, even though he physically owned Infamous 1 and 2, so the only obstacle was finding a PS3 console to play these games. But during my Infamous peril, it was as if Sucker Punch heard my woes and announced Infamous First Light in the summer of 2014, with a digital release later that year in August. I was beyond excited for this game, and even though I wasn't there to play it day one because I was a teenage boy without an income and had to strike a deal with my dad to get it later that year in the winter, I went straight to my best friend's house, who had an older brother who bought it for him, and watched him play it through to the end, then played it myself on his console. I consider Second Son and First Light to be pretty similar to one another, so I want to talk about these two games together before I start talking about my PS3 finding shenanigans. Many of the things I love about Second Son and First Light are applicable to Infamous 1 and 2, like the comic book inspired cutscenes, the dynamic camera angles as you attack with your superpowers, the beautiful open world that's such a joy to traverse, the characters that inhabit this world, and also those same characters that comprise the story. Second Son puts the player in the shoes of Delsin Rowe, the no-good younger brother of police officer Reggie Rowe. While Reggie is off fighting injustice and securing his community from trouble, Delsin is often the one causing said trouble by vandalizing and trespassing on properties. These two brothers are from a fictional Native American tribe called the Akomish, and this is a huge thematic point in Infamous Second Son, because while Reggie is trying to uplift the reputation of the tribe, Delsin's crimes make it hard on him, especially because it's his own brother causing him the hardships. After apprehending and scolding his younger brother once again, the two siblings suddenly witness a car accident, and when Delsin tries to help one of the survivors, who turns out to be a conduit, he passes out after touching the inmate's hand and awakens as a conduit himself.
The hell was that? What the hell?
I love this section of the game where Delsin is struggling to grapple with the fact that he's awakened as a conduit, and how he believes that Hank, the inmate we saw earlier, is somehow responsible for passing his powers on to Delsin, though this shouldn't be possible in theory. I mean, hell, the main story's protagonist Augustine mocks him for it when he brings it up in a later scene. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. While trying to help Reggie from the wreckage, Delsin accidentally lets some smoke blast loose since he isn't fully in control of his powers yet. And this part right here, where Reggie embraces his younger brother despite all the risks involved, gets me so choked up. I'm also an elder brother, and I cannot get past this opening scene without at least feeling a knot in my throat. I love this brothership between Reggie and Delsin, and this theme of helping one another out, despite their differences, is one of the most prominent themes throughout the entire game. You're even given a choice as to how you want to approach this brother-to-brother relationship with what's known as the karma system, which sounds exactly how it works. You do good deeds and make good choices, and you'll create a benevolent and caring Delsin. Make some not so good choices and harass people, and you'll develop a borderline psychopathic and evil Delsin. The community have differing opinions on the karma system. Some feel that it's a very binary split between good and evil, so you're living in absolutes, and the story beats don't change too much based on your decisions. It's a couple small things and the way Delsin behaves and looks that are impacted the most. You do get path-specific abilities, but I don't know if these alone are much of a reason to align with either of the two paths. There are a couple of really crucial and key moments in the story where this karma split could have been incredibly impactful, and in the original version of the script, I had picked a few scenes throughout the franchise to showcase how the karma system could have been used more effectively, but I decided against it simply because I don't want to spoil anything major in this video. The games are pretty old now, so I could talk about their stories with a proper spoiler warning, but that's not what I want this video to be. A lot of why I love the inFAMOUS series is because of its first impression shock value. If I had known about the major story beats beforehand, it wouldn't have had the same impact on me. And this is true for a lot of narratively driven experiences, but I think especially so with inFAMOUS. I still get pretty misty-eyed at certain scenes that I won't spoil here thanks to the brilliant delivery of the lines by the talented voice cast. I love the whole arc where you chase down Fetch and her supersonic neon powers, who I'll talk about a bit later since she's the main character of First Light, and I also love how Delsin pulls Eugene out of his man cave and shows him that they need to rely on each other if they want to make a world of difference for conduits. It's moments like these that suck me right into the world of inFAMOUS Second Son, and furthering this world building is the standalone title that takes place prior to the events of Second Son, inFAMOUS First Light. This much shorter title features Abigail Walker, also known as Fetch, and walks us through how she ended up in that convoy at the start of inFAMOUS Second Son. There isn't anything more I can say about First Light that I haven't already said for Second Son. They're both very similar to one another, from the presentation to the emotional beats to the overall ebb and flow of the gameplay and story. In terms of how the two games feel in play, it's as smooth as butter. But the traversal with the superpowers is where the game excels. inFAMOUS Second Son takes 4 different superpowers and makes traversing Seattle feel unique and fun with each of them. You can't switch abilities on the fly and combine traversal types in the midst of travel, but the open world is specifically designed to take advantage of each superpower. You've got vents that shoot Delsin from street level all the way up to the roof. You've got the neon ability, which is inherently very quick on the ground but drops like a rock when used in the air. You've got the video powers, which gives you a pair of wings to glide in the air for a brief period of time, with the ability to levitate slightly as well. I did mention there were 4 superpowers, and in the original script I did talk about the 4th one, but for the sake of spoilers, I won't say what the 4th one is. I'll keep it a surprise for those who might still be in a position to experience Second Son blind. The way you fight with each ability doesn't vary too much. You aim and shoot with the objective of either subduing enemies or killing them outright, with some helpful unique abilities scattered about to make each ability feel similar enough to where you can switch on the fly and have it feel natural, but just different enough to where they fill certain niches in combat. In First Light, Fetch is the original Neon user, and her playstyle is differentiated from Delsin's by being very melee-centric. You get up close and personal when playing as her. inFAMOUS Second Son is one of those games that I will forever be biased towards, simply because it holds a very special place in my heart. It was a first for many things in my life, so I'll always look back and remember it fondly. Playing it as an adult, I'm instantly transported back to when I was still a young teenager, navigating my way through life. That doesn't mean I've got my life fully under control as an adult, far from it, but I'm able to make decisions that I wasn't able to before because I was financially reliant on my parents. And in late 2019, with the help of my best friend, we were able to secure ourselves a PS3 Slim so that I could finally play, and so that he could replay those infamous 1 and 2 discs that had been sitting on his shelf. After I played these 2 games, I realized that it wasn't just Second Son that had an incredible opening sequence. In fact, Sucker Punch is just really damn good at making gripping opening sequences for their games. It isn't limited to just inFAMOUS. Look at Ghost of Tsushima for a more recent example. The first inFAMOUS opens with the protagonist Cole MacGrath accidentally leveling a huge chunk of the fictional Empire City, which is based on New York City, when a mysterious package that he's tasked with delivering detonates in his parcel. You awake in shock, realizing that you're somehow alive, continuing to limp your way through this broken parking garage, slowly realizing that you've unlocked superhuman abilities. However, it's awakened too suddenly and Cole can't keep it under control, and as policemen surround him, Cole unleashes devastating lightning bolts from all over his body, officially becoming the very first conduit, or in political terms, a bioterrorist. The term bioterrorist didn't take root until Second Son, but it doesn't change the fact that retroactively, Cole MacGrath would be the first. Moving along to inFAMOUS 2, Cole and his best friend Zeke, alongside the help of scientist Lucy Quo, are mere minutes away from traveling to New Marais, a fictional city based on New Orleans, where Cole is told that a scientist can amplify his powers to prevent a calamity known as the Beast. But speak of the devil and he shall appear, as the Beast begins rampaging through Empire City. Cole tries to put a stop to it, but as he is now, he just isn't strong enough, and he ends up losing the battle. This brutal defeat is a really motivational way to set the tone for the rest of the game, because you've seen firsthand the imminent threat that the Beast poses. So it's your job as Cole to power up and not only take revenge, but save the world from this doomsday beast. Focusing first on the original Infamous, this game introduces us to the legendary Cole MacGrath, the heroic character that you get to learn about in the Cole's Legacy DLC for Second Son. So getting to finally play as him after years of hearing about him was an awesome moment for me. I could begin to feel my teenage self leaping out. I absolutely adore the comic style cutscenes with the voiceover in Second Son, and this game was where that idea was brought to life and carried all the way forward to First Light. Jason Caudill's performance of Cole is genuinely breathtaking, although he would later step down from the role in Infamous 2, where the talented Eric Ladden would take the helm, due simply to the fact that technology was evolving and Sucker Punch wanted to use motion capture, which Caudill was unable to provide at the time. To me, both Caudill and Ladden are equally Cole MacGrath. I would have probably realized the voice actor had changed on my own when jumping to the sequel, but my best friend had told me this little fact before I started playing the second game, so I went in expecting his voice to be different. However, there's still a lot to talk about regarding Caudill and his rendition of Cole before we move to Ladden and the sequel. Cole isn't immediately the hero type, he's more of an anti-hero, and the choice is up to the player whether they turn Cole into a no-holds-barred brutal villain or into the role of a savior, because this game is where the karma system was introduced. I've already mentioned the concerns regarding the karma system and how it isn't perfect, so I feel it a little unnecessary to reiterate those thoughts for Infamous 1 and 2, but what I do want to talk about is how almost everything that makes Infamous stand out as a franchise originated in this game. The half melee, half superpowers shooting gameplay, the traversal through the map, the collectibles placed across the world, the good and evil choices that affect the outcome of the story, the stylish graphic panels, the unique usage of the PlayStation controller's quirks and features. All of it originated here. Of course, not all of it was perfect. The variety of abilities is slow to unlock and obtain, and the karma system is what it is. But regardless of all of that, something magical was born when Infamous hit store shelves in 2009. Infamous 2 picks up the story of the first game almost immediately with that opening confrontation against the Beast, and this game is an upgrade in literally every single way. From the dynamic camera angles to the melee combat to the fact that Cole gets dramatically different powers depending on your karmic alignment. Everything that worked about the original Infamous is dialed to 11, just like the year it released, 2011, and almost everything that didn't work or was rough around the edges was refined beautifully, like the way you traverse the world being more smooth and snappy. On the title screen, you even get the choice to continue with whichever alignment you had in the original game or start over from a fresh save file. The stars were aligning. The devs had hit a golden formula for a franchise with a small community to start, but one that was sure to grow exponentially, especially with the eventual release of the third entry in this trilogy. But that's the catch. A third entry never came, and Cole MacGrath sealed his fate in just 2 games. It's really hard for me not to be biased towards Second Son. That game is still my favorite in the franchise for reasons that I've already laid bare, but after experiencing the beauty that is Infamous 2, the margin between the 2 games is as thin as paper. There are certain areas where both of the games excel in their own ways, so I'm always flip-flopping between the 2 games anytime I praise the franchise, but it's my adolescence that always brings me back to Second Son more than the other 2. I can guarantee without a doubt that if Infamous 2 or the original had been my first exposure to the franchise, then I would have been just as biased towards those games. But now we come to the title of the video, because as we leave 2024 behind us and enter the new year, we also come upon a decade of no new entries in the Infamous franchise. While a new entry would be awesome and is the ideal scenario, we've also gone a decade with basically no Infamous at all. For years, fans speculated and held out hope for the franchise, and in 2017, Sucker Punch announced that they were working on a new project, but it wasn't Infamous. It was a brand new IP called Ghost of Tsushima. As we're all probably well aware by now, Ghost of Tsushima was an insane success, outselling every single Infamous game combined by a couple million, which is a crazy metric to think about. In 2022, Sucker Punch again went on record stating that neither they nor any other affiliate company had any current plans to work on Infamous or even on one of their older franchises, Sly Cooper. What really stung about this statement wasn't the fact that we weren't getting any more Infamous games or that Sly Cooper would continue to remain essentially dead, but it seemed to imply that the games weren't even being outsourced as ports to modern consoles. In 2024, Ghost of Tsushima was ported to PC by Nixxes, a familiar company that's ported a lot of Sony's previous first-party titles, so I don't want to say it's impossible, but Sucker Punch usually sticks to their word. At the end of Infamous 2, there's this blue lightning bolt that appears on screen in the form of a question mark, which people speculated meant that Infamous would return, and lo and behold, in October of that same year, we got Festival of Blood? Cole's a vampire now? I haven't mentioned it until now, but there is an awesome standalone game called Infamous 2 Festival of Blood where Cole becomes a vampire and is trying to regain his humanity. Anyway, I doubt this was what Sucker Punch meant when they said Infamous would return, as just a few years later, Second Son would grace our screens. Sucker Punch historically has been pretty transparent, which a lot of other companies could stand to learn from, but that's another point entirely. So I would genuinely attempt a backflip for the first time in my life if I saw any news regarding an Infamous PC port to PC or to PS5, or even a remaster of the older games. If the Infamous franchise really has entered dormancy, my one wish is that Sucker Punch and Sony would at least make the games more accessible to a wider audience, just as one final send-off. I'm kind of hoping for a port, which is part of the reason why I didn't spoil the game in this review and why I went back and re-edited the script like a million times. In fact, this is something I wish Sony would do with a lot of their franchises, like Bloodborne, Gravity Rush, The Last Guardian, a bunch of their older Ratchet & Clank games, and so many more that I could continue listing on and on. I know that these games exist under a bunch of different developers, and it isn't as simple as let's outsource this right here and now for a port or remaster, but if Sony genuinely wanted these games to be played, I believe fully that they would take the steps necessary to make it happen, even if it were a lucrative process. The fact that they haven't been ported or haven't received a next-gen upgrade means that this isn't within the interest of the company at the moment. It might be a low priority hiding somewhere in a Sony executive's yellow manila folder, and that's about as much as we can expect for now. When I say that I miss Infamous, it's a lot less literal than it sounds. It's not like the games are unplayable. I've got a PS3 and a PS5 that I could boot up at any time to scratch my Infamous itch. More so, what I mean when I say that I miss Infamous is that I miss my youth. We all have those special games that highlight a period of our lives. They may not be critically acclaimed. They might be stuck on an old console, or they may not even be known by the majority of gamers. That highlight game for me is Infamous Second Son. And if by some miracle the franchise makes a return, then that would also mean the return of that feeling of being a teenager again. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.